led you to finally join the course?
You, clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. For joining the course was your videos, a lot of the content, similar to other people. They had said that. So I've done Power Score. I reached out to like 10 different people that I knew who had, I guess, gone to law school, whatever. I'm a little bit different. I'm a non-traditional. So I've been working for about 7 years now, mostly in consulting tech. And I wanted to go to law school, made the pivot right now. And it's been interesting. Like this whole world, the LSAT world is something totally different. I was naive and thought that I could do it in like 3 months. That's a lie. Like law school, it takes an entire year at the minimum. And I've learned that through your courses. Like once you start like getting into it, you'll see it. And like you post, I think about like 10 videos a day. Easy. I've watched everything you've done from TikTok to YouTube. I've seen damn well near everything, especially for the last year. But joining the Discord, that was good. Your review sessions are good. You're like, I can compare yours to Power Scores to like other things that I've seen. And it's condensed. It's easy. It's nice. Which was really good, to be fair. I had like a 7-point jump. So I'm happy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's great. It means a lot to me. I'm so glad that the material has been useful to you. I mean, I try to boil things down as simply as possible. I know longer isn't always better, right? I mean, it's overwhelming sometimes to have too much.
A client would send something back to me if I put it too long. So I like how yours is very to the point, direct. And I think that it was good for me. I saw there was a girl that posted a video. I think you reposted it. She was saying that sometimes it's good to switch up your study styles. So if you're using, let's say, Kaplan, Power Score, Sage, whatever, go to something else and you can really make a huge difference. And if I ever had like advice to anybody, that's what I would do. So hopefully I'm submitting tomorrow. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about, if possible. I want to ask you everything about law.
Sure. I'll do what I can.
Well, I just want to ask you about like this whole process of admissions. So I'm a non-traditional. I've just turned 30. So I'm a little bit getting that.
Happy birthday.
Third life crisis. I feel like I'm so old. It's insane. But no, because I was talking to somebody and they're in their, like, they're younger. They haven't reached that, like the 30 and then going to the side. I'm like, dude, you're going to hit it. And you will have thoughts like you will have like an epiphany. Like there's nobody that I know who's reached this level. And if they are where they are, like they're really happy. If they're not, they have a lot of ground to make up. Or if they want to make a change, it's like, yo, I need to make a change this year. This is my year situation. I definitely with the pandemic, and I think everybody was on the 2020 grind, and then that kind of got pushed to 2022. But all part of the struggle, right?
Yep.
So I wanted to know, in college, I never really planned to go to law school. Definitely wasn't in the cards. Like, just didn't think about it. I did computer information systems. It's definitely not a major. I would have done history for sure. I find it really enjoyable. I do pretty well at it, thankfully. But that was the one that if I wanted a high GPA, I would have done that major, maybe, something like that in the arts. I don't have a good GPA. And if is this confidential or no, this conversation?
So these conversations, I mean, I do typically record them for release, but if you're not comfortable with that, that's totally fine. Or I can cut out certain parts.
Okay. I was going to tell you. Yeah, I was just going to tell you like my GPA, if that's.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I got like a 3.07, not the highest GPA in the world. I live in the DC. I actually live in DC, not that far away from the Georgetown Law, GW. Mason's not far from me. I think you're in New York, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So I love New York. Best place to work in the world. Best place. So I wanted to know, on the 509 reports, there are 25, 50, and 75, right? They'll show you like their different ranges. Where do you need to be falling if you need to be a splitter? So I've seen some of your videos on splitters, but I think from what I've seen, it's a very, case-by-case basis from a lot of your videos. So I wanted to specifically ask you about my case, if possible, since I have you, what your thoughts were on that. LSAT score, I just got a 163, was my best score.
Nice. Congrats.
Thank you. I was hoping for higher, but well, you know,
I mean,
it is what it is.
to score your highest PT is pretty awesome, though. I mean, not everybody does. So
Yeah.
that's the best you could have reasonably expected.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good situation to be in. So you scored a high on the LSAT. GPA is a little bit lower than you'd like. Yeah, to some extent, it can kind of cancel out. To answer your question, let's say for a given school, you're at the 25th on the GPA.
Yeah.
GPA is lower than you wanted. LSAT is roughly at the 75th. You're in a pretty good situation. If you're at 25th for one and 50th for another, not ideal. It is what it is. It is not, I'll just be real about it, right? The numbers objectively don't lie on that one.
Yeah.
But that being said, you have a couple of options. You can either retake the LSAT, or if you're done with the LSAT and don't want to look at it again, that's fine. Then in that case, you want to pump up the soft factors as much as you possibly can. So you going for the unlimited edits is a great choice if you want to focus on what you can control at this point.
Yeah. So I've definitely done unlimited edits. I'm about to probably be applying to 15 schools tomorrow. I think that's the game. My question is how, so I've seen some of your videos. I know that like work experience, mostly the factors, and I understand why it's, you know, it's quantitative. They can actually see GPA, LSAT score, if it's GRE, great, but they're able to quantify that and then objectively kind of rank different candidates, right? That way. For non-traditional ones, and I know there's this whole thing on like building this diverse classroom and all these types of things. I went on the top, I like data, so I went on the top 50 schools. They all put their age ranges, right? I've found out that the average age, it looks to be, is 24, just like across the board. Maybe within a 1 year gap of that, but it's pretty much 24 years old is like the sweet spot. They also say that, like, for example, NYU, close to you, there's only 11% that are 5 years over. How much does that play into admissions for trying to, like, let's put it this way. You have different things for diversity, right? How much does the age card go into that? I guess would fall into diversity, would it not?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. Technically, definition of diversity would include anything that is underrepresented or outside the quote unquote norm or average, right? So as you said, if 24 is the average, you're 30. Yes, that is technically non-traditional. It is outside the age range. Is age diversity the primary kind of diversity they're looking for?
Probably not, but
probably not. I mean, realistically, it's underrepresented minorities, racially, specifically African Americans, Latino, that sort of thing. Unfortunately, Middle Eastern is not considered an underrepresented group that benefits from affirmative action. African Americans do not benefit from affirmative action in that way. But I want to circle back to something you talked about earlier, which was you went for computer networking. You wish you'd done history. I wanted to jump in and interrupt you right there and be like, no, actually, computers are way better for law school admissions purposes because that is unique. How many comp sci majors go to law school? Hardly any. How many history poli-sci people go? That's probably the most popular one there is. History poli-sci is nothing special as an undergrad BA. Comp sci, super unique. Why? Because Silicon Valley pays everybody 6 figures. So if you want to go to law, you're clearly not doing it for the money. And that's a very unique background and perspective to bring to the law school classroom. Plus, when you graduate and you have a JD and you actually understand computers, every startup's going to love you. Every tech company is going to love you if that's what you want to do.
That's the goal.
Because that's great. Then you're in a really ideal, you're setting yourself up ideally there to be in a very unique situation where you actually will understand what you're working on. Whereas, I mean, you've seen things about the Supreme Court doesn't know what social media is, right? Like, legal profession is so backwards on tech. For you to actually understand tech and have a JD, it's the perfect intersection right there. I would highlight that.
So you're part of your guys' edits. One of your teammates, Nora, we changed around my personal statement, and that's now like the theme. Why law with the
that's what you want to do. That's exactly it. So I mean, we're talking. I know you're all doing the edits. You're finishing things up. You're going to submit. But I just want to tell you, like, this is the diversity, and for you and anyone else who listens to this later, this is the diversity element I want you to focus on highlighting, not the age thing, because yes, being an older than average applicant is unique, but the only way you earned being 30 is by not dying before the age of 30. Like, it's not, it's for some people that is an accomplishment, but that being said, I think the comp sci is a much more unique accomplishment to bring to the table.
I appreciate that. Talk to me about this. So how does it work with transfers, right? So we talked about obviously not going the traditional route, potentially, I'm applying to a range of schools. So trying to get some safer schools on there, trying to get maybe some reach, dream schools, et cetera, et cetera. Talk to me about the process or your take on transferring versus not transferring. So like after the first year, right? So it's like, let's say you come non-traditional, maybe you didn't have the GPA. Okay, fine. It is what it is 10 years ago at this point. So like, what exactly do you do now? If let's say you wanted to graduate from a dream school, let's say you're from New York. So if you wanted to graduate from NYU, you've said before, Brooklyn University was a great school to potentially get into that New York theater, right? I think I've seen in one of your videos before. So if you wanted to one day say, hey, I want to go to NYU, this is my dream, et cetera, is that something you would recommend? Or would you wait a year, maybe take the LSAT again? Given the option, right?
Great questions. Okay. So first I'll say that as just a preface, I would never go to a law school where you wouldn't be happy doing all 3 years there. Okay. You can never assume that you're guaranteed to transfer out later.
Okay.
Inertia is a very powerful force. You form friendships, you settle into the community, you might end up renting an apartment nearby. And obviously within New York, everything's close, but I wouldn't assume that transferring is definitely going to happen. You also can't assume that another school is going to accept you that you want to go to midway through. However, if you are performing top of your class, wherever you initially go, then you have the maximal chances of then transferring out to a better ranked school where you will then lose the advantage of being a big fish in a smaller pond. Okay. Of course, you get the fancier sounding degree in the end and maybe better professors, better connections, all that sort of stuff. I'm just saying there's a lot of pros and cons on both sides. If you painted the other option of waiting a year, retake the LSAT, apply with the hopes of getting into the higher ranked school right off the bat. That is another option. There's no easy answers here. Nobody ever wants to wait a year, but there's also no guarantees. So there's no easy answers. I mean, if you really want to apply this cycle and start this fall, then go where you can with your current score and GPA and see where you end up. But you also don't have to accept any offer of admission that you get this cycle. You could choose to see what you get and then say, you know what? I don't like any of these options. I'm going to negotiate for more scholarships. And if I still don't get what I want, then I'll wait. Or you can just say, you know what? I didn't love these options, but I just want to get started and maybe I'll transfer. But the maybe is the key word there, not a guarantee. It's just a maybe.
Touching on that, how exactly, so let's say in the negotiation process, how would that exactly work? Would you ever do like a 3-way parlay where, you go to school school A gives you, let's say 5K, school B doesn't give you anything, school C you're on the wait list, right? So if they give you 5K, do you maybe get the 5K from school B and then use school B to get into school A? Is that too much?
You could do that. No, that's fine. I mean,
is that very normal? I don't know how like I said, non-traditional here, but I'm just curious how the ins and outs, how the game is played.
Yeah. I mean, sense. I actually wish more people negotiated in the way that you said. I mean, it's one thing at a used car dealership, negotiating is the norm and expected. However, and in more traditional societies, it's also normal and expected. It would be rude not to. It'd be like, wait, you ruined the game. There's no game here. You want to play the game. In law school, though, for some reason, people feel like because they're these massive institutions and everything feels very formal, that it's somehow untoward or impolite to negotiate. Yeah. But in fact, most people don't pay sticker. So in a way, you're kind of a sucker if you do. And it could be that you're paying sticker just because your numbers are low. but it's worth trying to get scholarships. And I would just change the 5K you said to be more like 10K or 15K and make it per year.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking, so I don't want to be too rude or anything. I don't know if, since we're recording, but I'm thinking more on the lines of, in corporate America, if I go for 2 jobs and I want to go work at company A at the end, and I know company A's median is this much, and I know I can do that job, but they have 1 million applicants all around the world or whatever. Let's say it's New York, they're getting it from everybody. I'm going to leverage my company's thing to another company to go and get the third company if that's where I need to be. I think it's very common in tech consult. That's very common. I just don't know if it's common in law school admissions.
Yes, well, as I said, I mean, it's not as common as I would like it to be, and that's just because that's only because applicants are intimidated by negotiating, and we're somehow taught that negotiating is rude in an academic, polite context. But again, there's big money on the table here.
Yeah, exactly. So
there's big money. There's big money on the table.
Why am I going to let it go? Yeah.
And I mean, coming from a comp sci background, I mean, engineers, all programmers are highly desirable. And so as a desirable asset of labor.
Yeah, that's why I think we are able to do that. That's why I'm asking if well, here's the thing though, if law schools talk to each other, and obviously you see all these reports on how they set the scale for how much each applicant can get, I guess to limit what we're talking about essentially. I know there's different laws against it, and the Supreme Court's dealing with all these different things, but my main question is, and I think this is good for everybody, would it negatively impact you if they were to find out, hey, Steve over here, he's talking to 3 schools, he's trying to make his decision, he's trying to get the best deal out there? Is that a problem?
No, there is nothing wrong with it. There is nothing wrong with it in the slightest. And it's your obligation to yourself and your future self to set yourself up for the best possible offer. And so negotiating with different schools, talking to multiple parties simultaneously is totally fine, as long as you are honest and as long as you are polite. Note that being honest doesn't mean you have to show all your cards. Yeah. You don't have to disclose more than you need to. And it's also okay to apply to a school that you have no intention of going to, simply to get a more appealing offer. Yes, that's totally fine.
That's gonna be my next question. Yeah. So that was you had said that earlier, and I was gonna be like, is that something you would do or not? Because and how does that, so from what I've seen in previous videos from yours, I think it needs to be by location and then by ranking. Is this correct?
Yeah, so location and ranking are both key factors because you want to compare like to like. So a school on the East Coast doesn't really consider, let's say a school that's ranked 15 on the East Coast.
Georgetown.
Okay, fine, Georgetown.
Yeah, they would 15.
Not. Perfect. So they would not consider a school ranked 50 in Texas or the Southwest to be a real competitor.
Yeah.
And yes, there may be someone who wants to go to Georgetown and also has their significant other in Arizona. That could theoretically happen, in which case that would be an actual competitor for that individual applicant.
Yeah.
But on average, Georgetown isn't thinking, I'm really worried I'm going to lose a ton of students to schools in Arizona. That's just not how they think. But if it was Georgetown and George Mason, and what was the other, American or something else?
So Maryland's actually ranked 50th.
Yeah, okay.
I think GW is 27th. And then I think AU is 81st. Okay. And I believe Mason is 41st. I'm pretty close on those numbers.
Okay, so let's say then because they're all in the DC area, you could then say to Georgetown, I got a full ride offer from Maryland.
Yeah.
If that's true. If you get a full ride offer from Maryland, you could say, I really prefer Georgetown, but I can't pay sticker at Georgetown when Maryland gave me a full ride. What can you do to work with me on this? I can't take on 6 figures of debt. I already have undergrad debt or whatever the situation is.
Yeah.
You can then, Georgetown isn't going to give you a full ride also, likely, but they could give you something.
Doesn't hurt to ask, right?
It does not hurt to ask. This is the easiest money you'll ever make. This is up there with salary negotiation in terms of big impact savings from just a couple of emails. And yeah, you'll obsess over those emails and you'll make them perfect and you'll spend a couple hours on them, but a couple hours on a couple of emails to save tens of thousands in tuition. I mean, that's even easier than saving money by studying for the LSAT.
You can't lose on that hour per money, right?
For sure.
I wanted to touch on this. So you mentioned, like, let's say going up the rankings. How important is it to go to let's say a higher ranked school? If your goal is you want to get into big law, forget how much money you're willing to pay to go to law school. So in this example, let's say that, the money was arbitrary. It doesn't matter at this moment, right? Even though it obviously does, but let's just say that we're putting that to the side. So if your goal is to get into big law, is it better to be higher ranked within the schools we were just talking about? Let's say the DC schools again, the Masons of the world, et cetera. Or is it best to go to, let's say, the top dog, who would be, I guess, Georgetown in the DC area, to go to that school, but maybe you're ranked in the middle? So bigger fish in let's say at a lower ranked school, but a medium fish in a bigger ranked school, a higher ranked school, sorry.
I'll preface by saying that I'm not the ultimate authority on this. This is a little bit outside my wheelhouse.
Okay.
But my intuition is that the brand name of the school will matter more than where you placed within the school. So you wouldn't want to be top 10% at a much lower ranked school. You'd want to have Georgetown on your resume, is the short answer on that, because it has such a cachet that when they see the Georgetown name on the resume, they don't even need to see much more than that. Gotcha. But I would talk to people though.
I looked at, there's a website, I think it's called like the Vault or whatever. I might have gotten it from one of your videos as well. And I just did some analysis, and like Chicago is like 80%. It's kind of insane. I wanted to ask you something. So part-time. So in the DC area, we have really good options for part-time. I think in New York, Fordham is a really good option. I think they're top 3. They are actually ranked 3rd. So what is the difference between, let's say, when you're applying for part-time versus full-time? On the 509s, there's a huge range. If you get where I'm kind of going with this, with GPA, LSAT, et cetera. Also potential, I'm currently working, so maybe continuing a little bit, downsiding a little bit what my current duties are in order to do law school, but it would help monetarily. What is your take on part-time versus full-time in the admissions process?
My understanding is that it's a little bit easier to get into a part-time program than a full-time program. And you graduate with the same degree in the end either way.
Okay.
It's nice to be able to minimize the debt you're taking on by working simultaneously, especially if you're working in the tech world. Imagine salaries are better than they are for a lot of folks doing paralegal work and such. So your opportunity cost is higher to give that up relative to somebody working as a paralegal. So that's an argument in favor of you keeping that. As long as you can manage the work, law school, life balance, because there's multiple things to juggle there, as long as you can manage it and maintain your work to whatever level you need to, as well as keeping your law school grades as high as possible, that's a balance you got to be able to manage. But also know that everyone else who's doing it part-time is probably in the same boat. Very few. That's part of why you have such a range, is that I think most people in part-time programs are doing part-time because they're also maintaining their jobs. They're all facing that same balance issue you are, but it's going to be a lot of running around though.
I mean, what's new?
What's new? I mean, if you were balancing college with athletics simultaneously, then you're probably not a stranger to that sort of thing though.
No, I mean, I'm sure this is a graduate program. It's going to be up there. Would have to downsize something, but no, I mean, that's good advice. I appreciate that. And I've noticed on the 509s how they are different. So it was like kind of, it looks very attractive to me right now, just to maybe at the minimal get in, maybe do a year that way and then see how it goes, because they have options to transfer into their full-time programs, like within the school itself, just to like switch into their full-time program after a year. I've seen it to be very common. I wanted to know, okay, I've seen things about the scoring bubble, and I'm very curious on this. For somebody right now, right? So if we take my specific score, is it better for somebody to hold off this year and then maybe wait for next year? Or do you see this scoring bubble continuing on? Because I know people have 5 years to get it, to use their score. I also know, if we look at the labor statistics, that there wasn't as many jobs, let's say in 2020, when the scoring bubble was, but right now everything is hot. Like everybody's hiring. So there is also that little bit. Now I could be biased because I think everybody's hiring because I'm in tech, like everybody's hiring in tech. I would assume everybody's hiring other areas, but I'm not the be all end all. What's your take on that for holding versus staying or like going for it? I know that you said that people want to go to law school and just want to go in all the way, but what's your advice on that? What's your take specific?
I hear what you're saying. I hear the thinking there. And I think it's smart. Yet you're right that if there was this temporary scoring bubble with the LSAT flex scores being inflated, then it stands to reason that if you could wait a while until those people apply and kind of kill each other off, then you can apply with better chances. I get the reasoning.
What it is. I mean, it's
pretty solid reasoning there. I don't know though that it would recover that fast. In other words, maybe in 3 to 5 years, the people with inflated scores would have just all applied and gone already.
Yeah.
But in the span of just a year or two, I think there's still going to be enough of those folks around because people postpone and delay all the time.
Of course.
I think that it's not worth putting your entire life with law school on hold for a year or two just for whatever marginal tiny boost you would get from not being with all the inflated folks.
Gotcha.
Plus, remember, I mean, the last LSAT flex administered was the one before the 2021 August LSAT. The last LSAT flex was whatever it was, June or July.
June. Yeah.
Right. So
June 2020, wasn't it?
Yeah.
June 2021.
June 2021. So I mean, this entire cycle has already been a lot of non-LSAT flex people. It's been the 4-section LSAT. So we're already a little bit past that. If anything, it was the prior cycle that had the most of it. Although many of those folks will be in this cycle now
we'll be
also.
In this cycle. Yeah.
But a lot of them will also be in the next cycle too. So I would not consider that as a factor. If you were, however, if you were going to retake the LSAT, and wait a cycle as a result of retaking it, as a little additional incentive on top of that, there would be the fact that you're not with all the inflated folks as to the same extent.
Gotcha. Do you think that they'll hold their current scores? Because I've done some analysis on the 509s. Like I said, I like data. So I've done some analysis on the 509s, and nearly every school in the top 50 went up by a minimal 1 point, if not 2. Georgetown had a crazy hike by 4 points. And their 75th range, a lot of people closed up their gaps in their 25th percentiles and jumped up by 3-4 points. And this is like across the country. Do you see them holding these scores, or do you see it going back down? Because if you look at the 2020 scores, 2019 scores versus, I mean, obviously it's a scoring bubble, to the 2021 scores, they're completely different.
They'll have to go back down because the people won't be there anymore. If LSAT
so you're sure on that. You're very sure on that then.
I mean, I'm not speaking specifically about this cycle. I'm speaking over a 3 to 5 year time horizon.
Gotcha.
It will have to go back down because the applicants won't be there anymore. If LSAC kills the bubble, which I think they're doing already, then the applicants are not going to have the same scores. I don't know when exactly that will recover. It's based on how long people stick around and postpone their applications, as people always do. But I think 3 to 5 years from now, the numbers will have to come down because there just won't be as many people. The only way for law schools to address this is to shrink their class sizes, but that involves giving up tuition.
And they're not going to do that.
They're not going to. I mean, that they have.
It's money on the table. Why would they do that?
It's a constant struggle that they have with their selectivity, but I do think it'll go down eventually. I'm really enjoying our conversation, Ali, but I have to run in a minute.
I have one last question that's key to me. All right, so we just talked about law school sizes, right? And I think maybe this could be good for other people because this is a question that I don't think people have answered. There are certain schools that have a lot of kids in them. The way I look at it is a lot of kids means a lot of networking. You can meet more people. Now, obviously, people could say, okay, a smaller school, more genuine relationships, fair enough. But I mean, more numbers, more opportunities. That's just the law. Like, that's just how it works. So would you suggest putting onto your horizon of how you're deciding which law school to go to, obviously financial, what you get into, their ranking, their different courses they have, would you also consider the size of the law school as an important part? There are some law schools, maybe 200 kids for first year, other law schools, 500. Does that play a factor would that play a factor in your mind?
If it's important to you, I would. I mean, you strike me as a charismatic, outgoing, extroverted person who will use the networking opportunities to the max. Not everybody will. So for you specifically, I'd say yes, consider that. I wouldn't make it the only factor though, because there's also the type of people you want to associate with. There could be a smaller school. I think Yale's law school is not very big, but the kinds of people you would network with there are definitely people worth knowing for future career prospects. The same would be true of Georgetown and a lot of the other schools you mentioned. So yeah, it's a factor. I think you want to be happy where you go and you want to be able to maximize the benefits you get from going there, and networking is certainly a part of that.
Awesome. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I've really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you so much. And please give if you talk to her, please give a very nice thank you to Miss Nora. And yeah, I appreciate everything, man. Thank you so much.
No, for sure, Ali. It was a pleasure. Great to meet you. And please keep in touch and let me know how things go for you.
Definitely will do. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.